Good evening and welcome to Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at national, state, and local news through a progressive perspective. On this week's show, we sit down with newly elected chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Fred Prejean. Fred has served on the Planning and Zoning Commission for over 10 years, and this is actually, I believe, the second time he has served as chairman of this commission. We sat down, talked with him about some of his goals and priorities for this term and what they plan on getting accomplished through the Planning and Zoning Commission. Some really interesting stuff, and kind of to continue on our series that Dr. Barbara Connor started with us when she sat down with Thomas Salmons just a few weeks ago. But first, as always, this week, your progressive news and commentary. Senator Landrieu brings the Senate subcommittee to New Orleans. That's right, Senator Landrieu, after just being named to chair a subcommittee of the Homeland Security Committee of the Senate, convinced Chairman Lieberman to hold a field hearing in New Orleans, which took place 1 week ago just today. The hearing saw a few protesters, obviously a lot of people still upset with what is been a terrible response, terrible efforts on trying to rebuild this city. Obviously, some of this red tape needs to be cut through. What we did hear in the hearings was that a lot of times red tape is being blamed for basically inadequacies.
Thanks for joining us today. Nearly a week after President Bush was criticized by members of both parties for not mentioning the recovery efforts here along the Gulf Coast from Katrina and Rita, during a State of the Union speech, a U.S. Senate panel has come to New Orleans. The panel is here today from the Senate's Homeland Security Committee. They opened a hearing on the federal response, or the lack of response, to the hurricanes. This morning, the panel heard from Mayor Ray Nagin and Federal Recovery Czar Don Powell.
Just after the committee had called the meeting to order, Senator Joe Lieberman, an audience member, interrupted and asked if the White House could be investigated for their response after Katrina.
I have 100 signatures of victims of Hurricane Katrina. Why don't you tell them why?
We will.
Senator Lieberman, along with Senator Barack Obama and Mary Landrieu, promised to listen to the concerns of the people and find out why the recovery has been so slow since Katrina. On the first panel sat representatives of the Bush administration, FEMA, HUD, SBA, and the U.S. Accountability on Fraud and Waste. The panelists talked about the billions of dollars appropriated to Louisiana's Gulf Coast, but Senator Landrieu said that Louisiana has been treated unfairly, and it's also been treated fairly compared to other disasters in the past.
So the 10%, Mr. Powell, was waived for other storms, but we still have the added responsibility to pick up $1 billion match. We've asked, first of all, we've told you we can't afford it. Nobody listens to us.
Senator Landrieu said her suggestion to the problem was to use $1 billion from the $2 billion surplus the state has, to use that up front for a payment.
So hopefully these hearings, the first of which, since the Republicans wouldn't really look into them while they were in charge, now it seems like we might be getting to the bottom of it, and hopefully, if I heard things correctly, help is on the way, and they're working very diligently in Washington to do so. Testifying at the committee was Mayor Ray Nagin and various other senior officials from at the SBA program, HUD, and other departments of the federal government. Several departments have even admitting to taking 6, 9, even 12 months to even just validate whether an individual making a claim can do so. It's unbelievable. It should be noted that Mississippi has not had as many problems as we have had here in Louisiana in dealing with this. It seems that Mississippi just seems the wheels are greased there. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because they have a Republican governor? Who knows? Anyhow, obviously some work is getting done, and we're glad to see it. Hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of things. Karl Rove and Dan Bartlett have been subpoenaed. That's right. Karl Rove and Dan Bartlett have been subpoenaed to testify in the ongoing trial of L. Scooter Libby. Libby, as you'll probably remember, is on trial right now for his role in leaking the name of Valerie Plame to the media sources. Valerie Plame was a highly undercover CIA agent working on behalf of our country, working for a front firm. And not only did these individuals leak her name, but they also leaked the company, the shell company that she worked for, putting possibly tens, maybe even hundreds of people in jeopardy, realizing that this front cover was hopefully protecting them. It's unbelievable. Libby's trial has been coming out with news daily as to the ongoings that happened inside the White House. Libby is actually claiming now that he was the sacrificial lamb. He was the patsy that went up because they wanted to protect Karl Rove. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Karl Rove gets on the stand. Also, Scott McClellan and others were actually asked to join, and it'll be interesting to see what happens and what comes out of that. So much information is coming out on this trial, it's definitely hard to keep up with. Senator Levin takes to the floor of the Senate, and boy, let me tell you, he was mad, and rightfully so. Levin took to the floor of the Senate to outline the Republican cover-up. That's right, cover-up. That has been going on for the pre-war intelligence and the escalation to war in Iraq. He definitely outlined a lot of information that the Bush administration has been trying to cover up. It seems they have left the most damning parts of the report classified so that only the senators can see it. Interesting, because it's classified, the senators can't tell us what's in there, but the people who have read it have said it's some pretty bad stuff. So here's the clip. You take a listen and see what you think.
The intelligence assessments contained in the Intelligence Committee's unclassified report are an indictment of the administration's unrelenting and misleading attempts to link Saddam Hussein to 9/11. Portions of the report, which the intelligence community leaders have determined to keep from public view, provide some of the most damaging evidence of this administration's falsehoods and distortions. Among what remains classified, and therefore covered up, includes deeply disturbing information. Much of the information, redacted from the public report, does not jeopardize any intelligence source or method, but serves effectively to cover up certain highly offensive activities. Even the partially released picture is plenty bleak about the administration's use of falsehoods and distortions to build public support for the war. But the public is entitled to the full picture. Unless this report is further declassified, they won't. While the battle is waged to declassify those covered up portions of the report, unless, of course, portions truly disclose intelligence sources or methods, every senator should read the classified version of this report. It's available to every senator, and I urge every senator to read the classified version of this report and reach his own conclusion about what I and Senator Rockefeller have just said about the portions of this report that remain classified and unavailable to the public.
More will be forthcoming on this as the hearings are set for this week. It'll definitely be interesting, and I hope people will pay attention to this. This especially on the heels after hundreds of thousands of individuals took to the streets of Washington, D.C. to protest this war. It was definitely a protest like we haven't seen, at least in my generation. The last time something like this to the scale happened was during the Vietnam conflict and war over there. Senator Kennedy weighed in on the Republicans' filibuster on the minimum wage increase. Yes, if you haven't heard, the Republicans, 43 of them, including our own Senator David Vitter, are filibustering the minimum wage increase in the Senate. That's right, they're trying to prevent the minimum wage from going into effect. It's unbelievable to me, considering that Louisiana ranks consistently in 50th in wage earners. That means that per capita, our people make less than any of their counterparts in any of the other 50 states in the country. And Senator Vitter would like to, I guess, keep it that way. After all, I mean, those individuals don't make any campaign donations to him, so why should he be concerned about them? Strongly urge you to call David Vitter. But Senator Kennedy took to the floor and he attacked the Republicans who are filibustering the minimum wage increase. and it was definitely a sight to see. Take a look.
Mr. President, it is now 10 after 5 on the 5th day that the Senate has been considering raising the minimum wage from $5.15 to $7.25 over a 2-year period. We have not, as we have heard in the course of this debate, raised it in the last 10 years. This is just going to restore the purchasing power of those at the lower rung of the economic ladder. What it was really 10 years ago. Won't even give them an increase, won't even give them a benefit. Just restore the purchasing power. 5 days we've been debating. Rather simple concept that everyone in this institution knows and has voted on a number of times, whether it's over here in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. For 10 years, Republican leadership has refused to let us get a vote on increasing the minimum wage. Let's have no mistake about it, Mr. President. 10 years, the Republican leadership has basically refused to let us get it, even though a majority of the members in this body, a handful of those Republican members, have favored an increase in the minimum wage, but we have been unable to get to the sufficient to break the effective filibuster and deny us the opportunity to vote. These individuals that have been receiving the minimum wage, and their families, and their allies, and their supporters, and the workers of this country, the trade union movement, the AFL-CIO, the church groups, those that represent the great face of this country, and others, particularly Democrats and some conscientious Republicans, have said this is a wage. But we have still not had this institution, the United States Senate, go on record to say to working families in this country that they ought to get a raise. $240 billion in tax breaks for corporations, $36 billion in tax breaks for small businesses, increase in productivity, 42% over the last 10 years. But do you think there's any increase in the minimum wage? No. 5 days on the floor of the United States Senate. We've considered immigration issues, as we have now. We've considered Social Security issues. We have considered health issues. We are considering education issues. We're considering additional kinds of tax breaks for wealthy corporations. But do we hear from the other side a willingness, as this side is at this moment, at 12 after 5 today on Thursday? I speak for all of our Democrats and say, we're prepared to vote now. Now. But we still cannot get a $2.15 over 2 years. Over 2 years. What is the price? We ask the other side. What is the price that you want from these working men and women? What cost? How much more do we have to give to the private sector and the business? How many $1 billion more are you asking? Are you requiring? When does the greed stop? They have, on the Republican side, 70 more amendments. 70 more amendments. We have none. We're prepared to vote now. 70 more amendments. Oh, yes, we want increase in the minimum wage. We want this, we want that. But silence over there, or let's have some other kinds of amendments that have virtually nothing to do with this. Do you have such disdain for hardworking Americans that you want to pile all your amendments on this? Why don't you just hold your amendments till other pieces of legislation? Why this volume of amendments on just the issue to try and raise the minimum wage? What is it about it that drives you Republicans crazy? What is it? Something. They're going to require us to go in to have a cloture vote next week. I can see it already. Amendments have already been filed that are going to be related in case we do get cloture, to delay this even further. What is the price that the workers have to pay to get an increase? What is it about working men and women that you find so offensive that you won't permit even a vote? Denying the Senate of the United States the opportunity to express ourselves. We don't want to hear any more from that side for the rest of this session about permitting and not permitting votes in here when you're denying on the most simple concept, an increase in the minimum wage. We don't want to hear any more about that. This is filibuster by delay and amendments. I've been around here long enough to know it when I see it and smell it. And that's what it looks like. That's what it is. Make no mistake about it.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy, for sticking up and definitely pointing this out. You know, the Republicans always were marching to their mantra while they were in power, saying that these judicial nominations and that their bills deserve a clean up or down vote. No dirty amendments attached, no other crap. But no, they're not allowing it this time. They're filibustering. This is actually set, because of the recording time of this show, this was actually set to come to the floor again this past Wednesday. We'll be bringing you a report as to what has happened from there. For ongoing information on this and other matters, you'll definitely want to check on over to the Daily Advertiser's website, or for more detailed information, you might want to click on over to LafayetteDemocrats.org. There you'll have a lot of that information. And finally, our clip of the week. Jon Stewart tries to relate to Vice President Dick Cheney, and in a related note, it's the 1 year anniversary this week of Dick Cheney's famous hunting accident where he shot his friend in the face. Yep, it's the anniversary. Well, Jon Stewart actually takes a look at the Veep and tries to relate to him. So here's our clip of the week. Take a look.
Mr. Vice President?
So I'm not going to discuss it. You can ask that question all day long. You've got my answer. I don't want to be that precise. Now no administration in their right mind is going to answer the question you just asked.
We know no administration in their right mind would answer it. We're asking you. I don't have to sit here and answer a question. All right, it's an interview. All right. Anyway, during the interview, the same gentleman who said this,
we will be greeted as liberators,
did cop to a huge administration error.
In terms of mistakes, I think we underestimated the extent to which 30 years of Saddam's rule had really hammered the population, especially the Shia population, into submissiveness.
Yes, that was your mistake. The Shia's submissiveness. If by submissiveness you mean warlike vindictiveness. But I tell you, Cheney, he's the first guy in history with the 2400 hindsight. Later, in the interview, the same gentleman who said this,
I think they're in the last throes, if you will, of the insurgency,
copped to the now biggest threat facing us in Iraq.
The biggest problem we face right now is the danger that the United States will validate the terrorist strategy, that we don't have the stomach for the fight.
Here's the problem.
That's the biggest threat.
So the biggest threat now to America is you. And just a month after you were Times Person of the Year. Oh, how the mighty have fallen! You were up, and now you're down! Oh, you! So according to the Vice President, the reason that the original Iraqi invasion plan didn't work out was the submissive Iraqis, and the reason it might not work out now is the rest of us. I get the sense if there was a bull in a china shop, Cheney would blame the China.
Some of your good Republican friends in the Senate and in the House are now seriously questioning your credibility because of the blunders of the failures. Gordon Smith.
Wolf, I simply don't accept the premise of your question. I just think it's hogwash.
Hogwash? We have it on tape!
Great work, John. Great work. We definitely enjoy your show, and we hope everybody is tuning in. The Daily Show is on each and every night on Comedy Central. So definitely check that out and check your local listings. And that is your progressive news and commentary for this week. We want you to check us out online if you can. We are now have all of our shows up on our YouTube account. That is at youtube.com/AOC Blue Mondays. Definitely want to check us out there. Also, on Tuesday mornings, click on over to the Daily Advertiser's website at theadvertiser.com. There you'll be able to read my weekly column that is the Left Blog. We hope you'll join us there. This week, interestingly enough, I will be commenting on the recent DNC meeting. The reason why we're recording this a few days early is because I'm getting ready to fly out to Washington, D.C. to attend the DNC meeting. That's the Democratic National Committee, their winter meeting, and it should definitely be interesting. It's looking like we're going to have a few of the presidential candidates addressing all of us there. So it'll definitely be interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you some information as soon as I get back here on the show. Also, we'd like you to log on over to the Lafayette Democrats site. They've got a lot going on over there. Their website is LafayetteDemocrats.org. There you'll be able to click on over to their blog, see a lot of different progressive things that are happening, check out their calendar, and a lot of good stuff. Also, we want to remind you, Democracy Now!, AOC Channel 16, appears every single weekday at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. I can't tell you enough good things about Democracy Now! We have a huge and valuable resource now that we have them appearing here each and every day. So please do check them out, 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. After you watch our show tonight, tune in to your local news, and then go ahead and click on over to AOC Channel 16 at 11 o'clock. I don't think you will regret it. And with that, we'll be right back.
This week in history. In 1825, after no presidential candidate receives a majority of electoral votes, the United States House of Representatives elects John Quincy Adams President of the United States. In 1837, Richard Johnson becomes the first Vice President of the United States, chosen by the United States Senate. In 1914, Charlie Chaplin first appears as the Tramp, as his first film, Kid Auto Races at Venice, is released at Keystone Studios. In 1950, Second Red Scare, Senator Joseph McCarthy accuses the United States State Department of being filled with communists. In 1952, Elizabeth II becomes queen upon the death of her father, George VI. At the exact moment of succession, she was in a treehouse at the Treetops Hotel in Vienna. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower warns against United States intervention in Vietnam. In 1967, the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution ratified. The 25th Amendment of the United States Constitution clarifies an ambiguous provision of the Constitution regarding succession to the presidency, and establishes procedures both for filling a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, as well as responding to presidential disabilities. In 1968, the civil rights protest staged at a white-only bowling alley in Orangeburg, South Carolina, is broken up by highway patrolmen, leading to the deaths of 3 college students. In 1978, the blizzard of 1978, one of the worst nor'easters in New England history, hit the region with sustained winds of 65 miles per hour and a snowfall of 4 inches an hour. In 1990, collapse of the Soviet Union. The Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party agrees to give up its monopoly of power. In 1990, Nelson Mandela, a political prisoner for 27 years, is freed from Victor Verster prison outside Cape Town, South Africa. In 1994, Byron D. LeBeckwith is convicted of the 1963 murder of civil rights leader Medgar Evers. In 1997, the so-called Big Three banks in Switzerland announces the creation of a $71 million fund to aid Holocaust survivors and their families. In 2006, U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney accidentally shoots Harry Whittington in the face while the two are hunting together. Celebrating birthdays this week: Zsa Zsa Gabor, Leslie Nielsen, Robert Wagner, Rip Torn, Hank Aaron, Burt Reynolds, Ted Koppel, Tom Brokaw, Nick Nolte, Carole King, Roger Staubach, Joe Pesci, Judith Light, Natalie Cole, Jim J. Bullock, John Grisham, Kathy Najimy, James Spader, George Stephanopoulos, Eddie Izzard, Garth Brooks, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Sheryl Crow, Laura Linney, Chris Rock, Jennifer Aniston, Seth Green, Ashton Kutcher, Jim Barrows. This has been a look back at history for February 5th through February 11th.
Because of Iraq.
Because of Iraq, Osama bin Laden is still a threat.
Because of Iraq, our military is spread too thin.
Because of Iraq, there are more terrorists in the world.
Because of Iraq, America is less secure. So if you see commercials telling you to be afraid of terrorism, remember, it's because of Iraq.
Global warming. Some say irreversible consequences are 30 years away. 30 years? That won't affect me.